First on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, we got another whole different set of faces, which is nice. So next up is the public hearing. First, let's do the general assistance ordinance, and then we'll get into what everyone's probably here for. Replace Appendix A, is it A1 or A? I guess it's A1 with MMA recommended revisions.
So it's A through I. So annually, we put together revisions to the general assistance ordinance. All of them are maximums to housing, heat and oil assistance, all the things that general assistance takes care of. This year's probably more amendments than normal because there's been some drastic changes to how the state handles GA and it starts to spill down. So we've advertised that the public hearing for these changes are tonight. They're in your information packets. It slipped my mind, we made that advertisement in advance, so I had to amend the agenda to put it on there. But I would propose acceptance after the public hearing.
Any comments?
What are the substantial changes in the recommendations?
I thought, obviously Appendix A, which are household maximums, and Appendix B is what we usually look at. It was the things that I'm not used to seeing are mileage rate changed this year, and since I've been doing it, I've never seen that change. Utilities changed. I don't know if you noticed Appendix H was funeral maximums. Never seen that change. And then the misconduct change, which comes down from statute. Obviously, somebody from above has had an issue with misconduct. And
I've never seen that down there.
lots of changes I've never seen.
Where did the maximums come from? MMA, or did they come from the state?
They are handed down from the state. MMA and the state have kind of a relationship where MMA puts out these proposals rather than the state. I think once upon a time the state did put out proposals. The town isn't obligated to these maximums. You can set them wherever you want. I wouldn't set them any lower because that's where you're going to bump up in state law. You could set them. I have that backwards. I wouldn't set them any higher because then you're going to eliminate people that may be eligible. So.
Their maximums aren't very high, really.
No.
There's am I not seeing our area? I mean, the maximum income is $1,100 for a family of four. That's nothing. And that's gross.
I'm assuming that's a month.
So,
Yeah. GA is usually a monthly issue. So you come in and you find out if you're eligible. That eligibility lasts for 30 days.
I mean, that's no, it's crazy. For a family of four, that's nothing.
It seems that the numbers jump around from county to county, from metropolitan areas to non-metropolitan areas.
The numbers are usually based on median household incomes, rental rates, things of that nature. That's why it's nice that MMA puts together these recommendations, because it would take a lot of work for any individual town to kind of comb down through it.
I think the past 3 or 4 years we've just adopted MMA's recommendation. Before that, it was the state's recommendations, I think.
So like Jim said, we've never seen any amendments like this before.
Right. Does this have to be approved tonight, Jim?
No, the only thing is it's technically an ordinance change, so if you were going to change it on another date, we'd have to repost that date, have a public hearing, and do that change. So,
All right, I'm gonna ask the obvious. If it's an ordinance change, how can we change it, not the voters?
because the GA ordinance is one of those exceptions in ordinances where the selectmen are allowed to amend the appendices from time to time. You're not amending the body of the ordinance. If you were, you'd have to go to town meeting.
Would it hurt to put it off to the next meeting?
I'm fine with it. We would just use the already set maximums. And I don't know if you guys remember the MMA in the state was really late because of all the legislative changes that were happening last year. We didn't adopt these until like December.
So one more meeting, just give us a chance to look at them. Hey,
Yeah,
do
I
you
would
happen to have last year's in an email that we could just compare the two?
I can send it.
Yeah, that's
I would have
just
to
email
scan
them to
and
us.
copy. At the
Well,
same-
you can put them in our box. I'd just be curious to see the changes, that's all.
Sure. We did advertise it as a public hearing, so I'd recommend that if there's anybody that wants to weigh in. I don't think anybody came here for the GA ordinance,
Right.
but
But this would be the time.
Yes. Anybody have? Guess not. Do you want to make a motion to table it? Jeff? Motion to table it?
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? Table till next meeting. Next up is the Municipal Development and Tax Increment District Number 3. I think it worked out well last time. We let Jim give a short presentation because we have pretty much all new faces here, and then we'll open it up for questions because hopefully what he will present to you will answer a lot of your questions. Is everyone all right with? Okay. The floor is yours.
the first assumption I'm going to make is that most people have heard about the TIF district and has hopefully at least gone to the website and seen the presentation that's on our website or learned some of it from the Boothbay Register. So this presentation is not going to be the exact same one as we did 2 weeks ago. I'm going to try to answer some of the unanswered questions from the last meeting in this presentation. If we find out that I don't cover the things that people want to hear, then we can go back to that previous presentation. So obviously we're talking about the special town meeting on November 5th, and I'm going to focus mostly on Articles 2 and 3. I want everybody to understand those articles very clearly. Questions 2 and 3 should be analyzed by voters independently. They're very important one by one. A lot of people think that they need to be combined, and if you vote one way on one question, you need to vote that way on the other question. I'm going to show you why that's probably unwise. You should analyze them independently. Because there's merits to the TIF even if you don't like the bond. So question number 2, and honestly when you get to the polls you'll see that the question is a paragraph, but simply, can the town create a TIF district is question number 2. So what we're looking for permission for, can we create this TIF that shelters the value from tax shifts because of the new value that's going to be created from the country club development and expanded? Can we designate the new revenue for public improvements? Because those new revenues will alleviate pressures for public improvements, for roads, sidewalks, and paths serving the district. Can we put this money aside for economic development? Can we create these business incentives? Those are all portions of question number 2. Can we establish these boundaries as our TIF district? The sheltering aspect, I like to always go over this. Question 2 gives us the sheltering effect. So with our new value in the town that we know is going to happen, can we get the protection from state education subsidy, Lincoln County taxes, and municipal revenue sharing? So as that value goes up, revenue sharing goes down, education subsidy goes down. That has a tax impact. Lincoln County taxes go up. That has a tax impact. Question 2 gives us the protection in that question. That tax shelter ends up being an $800,000 savings for the town. So question 2 creates these revenue projections that you may have seen at one point in time, where we will create $179,000 annually that goes into the TIF fund, that creates $4.7 million in the end in the TIF fund. That's question 2. Back to the authorized uses of TIF revenues: roads, sidewalks, parking areas, construction of water, sewer, and related activities. So studies that may lead to water and sewer, grant writing that may lead to water and sewer. Economic development director is included as an allowable expenditure. Administrative expenses associated with the district. That's question 2. Question 3, very different question. I'll get off of question 2 for a minute. Can the town borrow money to fix transportation? This is the bond question. Very different question. So question 3 is, can we borrow $2.5 million to implement the Boothbay improvement plan, which is obviously still a very fluid plan, but represented behind Mr. Cunningham there, and I'll have it in my slides in a minute. Now question 2 makes the money that pays the bond for question 3. Question 2 creates enough funding to pay for the bond 100%. Some of the other bond facts: the projected cost for the village improvement plan is going to be in the range of $2 to $3 million. We're going to target DECD, Public Infrastructure Funds. Department of Economic and Community Development is DECD. We're going to target Maine DOT Municipal Partnership Initiative funds. We think there's about $1 million worth of state funds that we can get if question 3 is approved. So that's a $2.5 million bond for 20 years. After interest becomes about $3.5 million. The TIF revenues cover 100% of that, and the town has no additional debt after 2014. Question 3. So question 3 is saying, can we take this 2002 Route 27 corridor study that led to the 2002 alternative design and make it into some resemblance of the Boothbay Village Improvement Plan? That's question 3. So that gives the voter, when they come on November 5th, what I believe are 3 legitimate options in regards to question 2 and 3. And remember, I'm focusing on 2 and 3. So what are your options? You could vote no on Article 2, and you can vote no on Article 3. What will happen in that case? The Boothbay Harbor Country Club, and I couldn't get that to fit, so I abbreviated BHCC as Boothbay Harbor Country Club, will still expand. They will still do their expansion. Boothbay Harbor Country Club will construct their entrance. They're in charge of that. The town will add about $21 million worth of new value to the base. That could have a tax impact. You'll see I'll get more into the math here in a little bit. Matter of fact, I've got a typo on that, so pay more attention to the slide I have coming forward. The town would absorb this $800,000 tax shift because there would be no TIF. You voted no and no. So that $800,000 tax shift would happen. Most of it's Lincoln County taxes, you'll see in a moment. Second option, you vote yes on Article 2, you vote no on Article 3. Plausibly, you could vote no on Article 2 and yes on Article 3, but it's not actually a legitimate option. It's like no, no. Because if you don't create the TIF, the selectmen are going to squash the bond. They don't want $2.5 million they can't pay for. So yes on 2, no on 3. The Boothbay Harbor Country Club still does their expansion. Boothbay Harbor Country Club will construct their entrance. But now the town will add that $21 million, and the new revenue created doesn't go in the general fund. It goes into the TIF fund. We are protected from the $800,000 tax shift, and there wouldn't be a major project because the bond would be killed. Okay? And I don't think that we're going to do the project without the bond, but that's a question for another day. As of right now, if you vote no on 3, that kills that project. But the TIF would still be alive. Third option, you vote yes on Article 2 and yes on Article 3. Boothbay Harbor Country Club expands. Boothbay Harbor Country Club will construct their entrance. Notice I said that in all 3 options. The town will add that $21 million in new value. It'll create the $4.7 million in the TIF fund. The town will be protected from the $800,000 tax shift. And the town will attempt to do a traffic improvement design in the village. We will attempt to get that $1 million in state matching funds. And once again, I want to emphasize that the town is in the driver's seat on a major traffic improvement on Route 27, which is a state road. That is the major emphasis behind the project. Essentially, if the town is not in the driver's seat, somebody else is, and they don't live here. This came up a lot in the last meeting. Everybody was very concerned about my math. So I want to show how we do some of this math. First of all, we're going to start with a very basic one. How does the town come up with its tax rate? How do you pay your taxes equitably? Well, this is how it's done. This is about last year, and obviously I've rounded. It's not 1.1 exactly. If you want to see the rest, we can do it. But this is how it plays out. County tax is about $1.1 million. The town, $1.5 million. It's really 2.5, but the town makes $1 million. So if you ever look at that spread out, so the real obligation is about 1.5. Education's $5.2 million. That's $8.2 million divided by 974 million, the total value of the town. So everybody that owns $1 of value in the town pays the same share. This year it comes out to 0.0084, which is 8.4 per thousand. That's where your tax rate comes from. That becomes handy when you start looking at how the TIF works. So where does the new value come from? In 2012 and 2013, there's $4.9 million worth of new value. Most of it is already there. It just hasn't been committed, so that's what allows us to go back in time and capture it. April 1st is when it's committed. 2014, there will be $4.8 million more additional new value. You can see how it plays out. It ends up being $21.3 million times that magical tax rate of 0.0084 times 30 years ends up being $4.7 million. Doesn't actually look like that. It looks more like that. But I knew nobody would be able to see that, so I rounded everything out. I want to show you how the math is done. How does the tax shift protection work? $22.3 million. I think I bounced around between rounding that to 22. It's 22.3 is the real number here. $22.3 million increase to the town valuation. What does that do? Well, and I've had a lot of people checking my math on this one. Right now, the town is a minimal receiver in education. We get hardly any subsidy from education, so there's no real education tax shift. But if you create the TIF, if there is an education tax shift, within the lifetime of the TIF, you're protected. So maybe someday the state of Maine will pay 55% of education. Not going to happen this year, but maybe in the next 30 years it happens. That's the protection we're talking about. But we haven't allotted for it in the TIF. County tax, if we get this new $22 million, we're going to pay $23,000 more in county taxes in the first year of that $22 million. Ends up being $714,000 over the lifetime of the TIF. Increase in county taxes. Revenue sharing, once again, we don't get a lot of revenue sharing. Maybe that'll change someday. Probably not going to happen this year. But still, we get the protections. If we build the TIF and revenue sharing or education changes so that it's actually fully funded by state statute, we'll have those protections. You'll have more protection. But we've gone with conservative numbers. So $1,400 in the first year, $42,000 over the life of the TIF, ends up to be $756,644 tax protection with question 2 of the TIF. So an interesting thought that came up, I thought is very legitimate. If you vote no, no on question 2 and 3, $22.3 million is going to your tax base. That will lower my taxes. Absolutely correct. Let me show you how. We are a $974 million town. If you add that $22.3 million, we're a $994 million town. We go back to the tax rate math that I showed you earlier, $8.2 million divided by 994 million ends up being 8.31. Okay, so taxes go down 9 cents if the budgets stay flat. Based on economic factors, find that highly improbable. That's a 1% decrease in taxes. Another piece of information I want to demonstrate to you, we mentioned that if the project is done, we borrow the $2.5 million, and Mr. Coulomb does absolutely no expansion in the country club that the town is on the hook for a $2.5 million bond that we have to pay. I mentioned that it was a penny and a half for debt service for taxpayers. I want to show you where I come up with that number and prove to you that I was a little wrong. It was a 1.7 cents. But essentially you take the $2.5 million bond, which is $3.5 million after interest, comes out to $169,000 average debt payment. $169,000 divided by the new value, $994, is 1.7 cents on your tax rate. It would be a 0.2% increase in taxes in that situation. That's if we don't have protection through the TIF and we end up paying a bond. That's how that works. A couple of last thoughts in my presentation, things that I've heard around town. Somebody mentioned to me Monday night, tax increment financing. In the name is financing. They thought it was paying for the private development of the country club. No. Tax increment financing pays for public projects. It finances public projects like the Boothbay Village Improvement Plan or whatever we end up funding. It funds public projects. Another thing that I keep hearing about is we've named it the Boothbay Village and Industrial Park TIF. People are assuming that now the entire zone that we've drawn out becomes the village and the industrial park. That is incorrect. It's an administrative overlay. It gives us these TIF protections. It allows us to create the TIF fund. It gives some business incentives in that area, but zone and ordinance rules. You can't build it unless the zone and ordinance says you can build it. So you wouldn't alter the scheme of the makeup of Boothbay any more than the zone and ordinance already allows. We have some final information sessions, obviously tonight. We have open office hours on Halloween. If nobody shows up, I will leave early and trick or treat. November 4th is our last public hearing, which we anticipate having at the Boothbay Town Hall. I think we have everything set up. If it's really cold that night, we'll see how many people show up. All of the information pertaining to the TIF, which includes the Boothbay Village Improvement Plan, the development program, the special town meeting warrant, the attachments that go to the special town meeting warrant, the TIF map, the presentation I did 2 weeks ago. All of that is on our website in this box. Click on it. Also, if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see we put the full presentation of that night, a YouTube click. You just click on it. You can watch the 15-minute presentation. And call me, email me, find out, tell your neighbors to be informed. That's all I have.
One more item of note I think that it's worth noting is we have received a letter from, I forget how to pronounce his name, but Cologne, stating that if he doesn't build the clubhouse like he said he would after last meeting, he said, I will agree to make the town's principal and interest payments on the bonds described below in item B from January 2017 until such time as the clubhouse project is complete. And B is, the town issues a $2.5 million bond for the Section 1 road improvement plans along Route 27 as shown in the Boothbay Village Improvement Plan preliminary concept attached, except as these improvements may be modified by the Maine Department of Transportation requirements and completes construction of those improvements by the end of the calendar year. I am very encouraged by the community support for the road improvement project thus far and applaud the good work of the town officials on this important issue. So we have gotten a thing saying that if he doesn't do his improvement plans like he says he is, he's willing to pay the principal and interest on the bond.
Then I have an email from our attorney, Sally Daggett from Judson Bear Gardner and Henry. We ran this by her. She said this is legally binding. It's a very good step. If approved before we issue the bond, we will elaborate this into a more detailed agreement, but it's not worth spending the money on a more detailed agreement until there's an authority. But this is binding and legal.
One more point that I think deserves to be made loud and clear is, I mean, you see people, I've heard more people talk about if they vote on the $2.5 million bond package, you're going to get a rotary, and that's just the way it is. And that's, I mean, I can't speak for everybody here, but I don't believe that to be the truth at all. I mean, you would have local people sit down and come up with a workable solution. Maybe it's part of it, maybe it isn't. I don't know that answer. But we had to have something to show the people. We used the Route 27 corridor study, and that's drawn a lot of people saying, well, if we vote for that, we're going to get a rotary. Well, I don't believe that that's necessarily the case. We had to start somewhere, so we put something on paper, and there it is. Now I guess we can open it up to public comment. The only thing I would ask is you stand and state your name for the camera, please. Yes, sir.
Frank, just a question on the why we have to do anything to the road system. If I understand correctly, the proposal is to go from Chapel Road, is it? Across 27 up over the hill to the new clubhouse, is that correct? No.
Oh, you're talking about the entrance that the club is gonna do?
Yes.
Based on the designs we've seen so far.
And if they didn't do that, there'd be no need to do all those other things.
The reality of it is, I think they're gonna, I mean, I don't want to speak for,
That's going to be done anyway.
it's gonna be done regardless, and we would rather be in the driver's seat of that than have no say over it.
And I remember the DOT fellow was saying here, they don't do it that way.
What do you mean?
He said he would sit down with people and go over the project. He didn't say he would cram it down your throat.
Yeah.
So if we didn't put the road in that goes across from Chapel Road, which is only, what, 75 or 100 feet?
We're not gonna put, that's not part of the project.
That's cool.
Right.
Cologne's going to do that,
Right.
right? But if he didn't do that, then we wouldn't have to change anything.
That's not true.
But because that road is going there, isn't that what you told me? That if they put that road up to from Chapel Road up,
The village improvement plan is not a trickle-down effect of his entrance. They're completely separate items. They do end up being in the same area, and there's a little bit of overlap in interest. If there's no and no, and we don't end up doing any project in the village area, then Paul Coulombe and his agents will have to work with DOT to put traffic calming devices, some of which are probably represented in some way in the village improvement plan as it is now.
but wouldn't we have a public hearing to determine that we don't need another road 75 feet from another intersection?
Let me continue.
Yes, please.
Let me tell you how MDOT public hearings work. When I was in Livermore Falls, they did the major Route 4 corridor section, and we had sidewalks on both sides of the road. The people of Livermore Falls really wanted to keep those sidewalks. In every variation that DOT came forward with, they eliminated one sidewalk on one side. It wasn't until the town participated in paying for the sidewalk that DOT would even listen to it. Didn't matter how many public hearings we had. So the DOT does have a public vetting process, but your voice is a voice. DOT is still in the driver's seat there.
Never mind the people.
One other side note is after our last meeting, whether they watched it on Channel 7, saw it in Register, I'm not sure, but we was approached by a local business, Jim was, and I went and spoke to them. And they are interested if the TIF district gets formed of joining the TIF district. They already have a business in town, but it's going to get bigger. I promised them I wouldn't mention the name, so I won't. I just want to, we have had a business come out there since then that's expressed it.
Says in one, Fred Campbell, Boothbay, of course. This gentleman says that if you can't mention the name, why bring it up? You have a point, I think.
Because it's a potential business that's
Yes,
going into the
we know
area.
there are potential
Yeah.
businesses, and we know the arithmetic that our town manager has provided for us is based upon an increase in the value of the tax base of the town, but it's all potential. None of it is. We're all estimates. The figures, that's really the point of the arithmetic that was presented to us. Everything is fine about the arithmetic, except that the increase in the value of property of the town, whether it's the TIF, through the TIF, or just through the creation of the country club, is all estimates on potential. And am I correct in that?
It's estimates by a certified appraiser.
It doesn't matter whether it's a certified appraiser or not, it's still an estimate. There's no guarantee that any of that is going to be realized. There is the possibility, and in the case of the the country club, I would say, yes, there is the probability. But they're all based on estimates, it's very thin ice.
But the,
And
but the
that's-
thing that's kind of interesting is this,
But I only stood up to ask for one thing, and that is that the letter that you received from Mr. Colon, can you please make that letter public?
absolutely.
Yeah, because we all would like to read, at least I would like to read that letter. I would like also to inquire as to the degree to which this letter is in fact a legal document and is enforceable. I have some skepticism on that point. I heard Mr. Enforcement the town attorney say that she believes it is, and I respect her judgment, but nevertheless, I would like to see the letter, as I'm sure many townspeople will.
Anytime we get any kind of correspondence, it's public record anyways.
How will it be made public for us? Or how
We-
will we get it?
We received it today, this afternoon, so obviously we couldn't distribute it in advance. And it took me just the amount of time that we had before the meeting to get our lawyer to look at it. But I've already given it to Ryan Lane from the Register. Hopefully he'll use his resources to make it public. We'll put it on display out here at the town office. I'll scan it, put it on the
Yes,
website.
that's what I was hoping you would do.
Hopefully all of those things get it in the public.
Thank you.
Frank?
In reference to this gentleman's question about how the project's going to go forward, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I gather from all the looking into this that I've done is that entrance to the country club is going to happen, and all the projects at the country club are going to happen regardless of these questions here. And so whether it's voted down or it's whether both are voted down or both are voted up, or no matter how it goes, that's happening, okay? And let me finish, okay? And that's what I'm assuming. I may be incorrect. That's happening, and I'm a true believer that local control is the most efficient control, and these give us certainly much more town control than does just being at the mercy of a private developer in the state of Maine. I mean, we get to come to the party because there may be some things, some traffic things that spill over into this district. So, but regardless of how this vote goes, that's all that happens. I mean, we don't get to vote on whether he puts the entrance in between Betts and Keniston Hill. That's his property. I would believe that he's bound only by town ordinance, and that's the controlling factor there. We don't have any say in what he does with his own property, other than what the town ordinance says. Is that accurate?
Chuck Brown. The DOT, you know, it's a give and take.
Can you stand up? Thank you. Sorry.
Do I have to stand up?
Yeah, if you would, it just
I
is
can't
better.
stand and talk, I'll pass out. But the way I see it is the DOT sees this area as a problem for traffic. He knows that, you know, the monument is a big issue. And they're not allowing another access on 27 unless they get some improvements with the problem. That seems like Coom is pushing this issue by insisting on having an access to 27.
Can I answer? We approached Paul Cologne or Boothbay Harbor Country Club, however you want to put it, about their improvements. We fell onto it, I guess is the best way to put it. And Jim met with them several times. Dale and I met with them once about the whole thing. We're the ones that went to them and wanted. I mean, they had already came up with something that went as far as nothing to do with this. From basically the other side of Betts, north is where he was going. We said, well, gee, why don't we kind of collaborate? That's where we came on board. So he has absolutely zero interest in this.
But DOT is not going to allow that unless they get.
There's a driveway there already.
But they're not. They still. Okay, here's an example. The Mormon Church on Route 1, the intersection in Danvers, or I guess it's Newcastle. I don't know. But in order for them to build that church, the road was there, the intersection was there. They had to have the DOT put in these, you know, temporary island things that are flashing light. The DOT is not going to give approval for access to the highway unless they get improvement on the problems of the area.
I think they already had preliminary approval long before we even knew. I may be wrong. I'm strictly speaking out of turn, and I don't want to put them on the spot. But they had their plan already in hand north of that to break traffic and stuff. I don't know if they had approval or not. I know they had met with DOT. I can't tell you any more than that because I
The
don't.
line isn't north of his new entrance for the country club, Stevie. The line is that black line there, and if you come just below that black line, that's where the new entrance is.
Right, I
So-
said north of Bass.
Yeah.
Just north of Bass is
Right.
where his new entrance is. That's what I was talking about.
I'm not sure you understood what Jeff was saying, though. Because he's saying that DOT, it's a give and take with DOT. If this was already planned, and what you said was also correct, because when we jumped in, it was for north of that, where the common is, where the town office complex is, where the monument is, and said, do the whole thing, instead of just doing half of it, because the bottom half of that was already planned.
Right.
And I'm intimately familiar with DOT best practices. The town uses them as well. And I'm also intimately familiar with the size of the right-of-way in that area because we're building a sidewalk.
Yeah,
It's
well,
very,
how does that sidewalk, fit into this whole scenario?
it's represented on the preliminary plan right now. The sidewalk essentially is.
How do you put that sidewalk in without moving Back River Road?
See, these are a lot of misconceptions about this plan.
Yeah.
We are not voted on this plan.
I understand that.
And essentially, there are a lot of things that we don't know about this plan. And if we were going to hire a traffic engineer to sit down and iron out all the mechanisms that we have at play here, we'd probably spend tens of thousands of dollars, which we don't have in our operating budget. So we have a preliminary plan that puts together some variables and leaves some questions unasked. Now, one of the ones that a lot of people are focused on is it says relocated Back River Road. Because in this example, we use a roundabout as a mechanism here. Now, if you use a roundabout, Back River Road cannot come into the roundabout because the traffic engineer says the roundabout has to be bigger. So if we elect to use a roundabout, we have to figure out what we're going to do here. If we elect to not use a roundabout and use some kind of intersection, maybe a signaling device, then Back River Road is fine. But until we sit down and figure out the pros and cons of every mechanism being used in here, it doesn't make any sense to write out a final plan. You put out the best plan you can, and then you have weird variables out there that say, we don't know yet. But I can tell you right now, this is a state corridor, this is a state aid road, this is a state aid road. There's a historical house here that some people have said the town is going to take down. Well, if we plan to put a road here, we have to apply DOT rules on take-ins, which means we'll have to pay this person the price of their house.
What about eminent domain?
Well, hold on a second. We have to pay for the price of that house. And matter of fact, I think they've tailored the eminent domain law here recently, which towns never use eminent domain if they don't have to, and I don't think they want to. But essentially, you drive up the cost of the price of this project by taking a historical house here. So it's never going to happen. It can be a concern amongst the public, but there's no way that this plan goes forward taking historical houses.
But correct me if I'm wrong, Jim. There's some verbiage in the proposed TIF agreement that says we cannot displace or tear down.
I think you're
The
right.
TIF agreement?
Yeah,
I'd have to go back and look. I can't say.
because that was one of the few things about it that I actually agreed with. But what we're running in here tonight is why I said at the last meeting I can't support this, because there's too many unknowns. That we need more time to work on this.
Unfortunately, with more time comes the loss of state funds. I mean,
The
that's...
possibility.
This man.
Kathleen Marty, Boothbay. I would, having looked at the diagram when I first came in, and now I see it up here, it says improvement plan. I see nowhere on there that it says speculative, proposed, unless I'm not reading it because it's too small.
Preliminary
Yeah, it's too-
concept.
Yeah, it is too small. It is down there.
But you don't refer to it as a preliminary as much as it is an improvement plan, which looks to me like you've made the decision, or this is the way we're going to go. And I think it's misleading the way it's phrased.
Trust me, The last thing I ever want to see is a rotary. Just personally, but, yes ma'am.
I'm Helen Missouri, I'm from Southwood, but I'm very interested, especially in the traffic circle, because I drive there every day, as does everybody in this whole region, that will go through that circle. And I can't tell from this drawing, is that a 2-lane, 3-lane circle, what is it?
It's a good question. Let me explain. I wish I could blow this up. I probably could if I went to the actual. This is a 1-lane roundabout. There's a difference between a roundabout and a route and a rotary. A rotary usually has an exit lane and a travel lane. This is 1 lane. When you're looking at this interior circle here, which some people might think is another lane, if you look at the point out here, it's easier to read on the big one. That is a commercial truck apron. So essentially, when commercial trucks come in here and they have to make that turn, their back tires or their large vehicles will ride the commercial truck apron. Now, a commercial truck apron is usually textured, so it feels funny. They might use pavers or concrete. So if you're in your car and you drive on it, which I guess you could, it's going to feel rough and you're not going to want to do it. But with commercial trucks, it really doesn't make any difference at all. So this is a 1-lane roundabout.
Okay, because I was in a terrible traffic accident with a big 16-wheeler truck in a rotary, because they just, go anywhere and completely sideswipe me. But if this is not a permanent plan, it's a preliminary plan, but you're voting on the money here to do this, but then you come up and say, oh gosh, this circle isn't big enough, you've got to eat into the Maidan more, or whatever it's going to cost more money, you decide to do a rotary instead of a circle. I don't see how you can ask people to vote on a bond when you don't have a real plan. I just don't understand that.
Well, the opposite would be us to develop a real plan with tens of thousands of
How
dollars.
do you ask people to vote on something, and then you're going to have to come back and say it's going to cost more money? The second question is, how much are you taking out of the Maidan?
Out of the what?
The village green.
Oh, well, with it, at this level of drawing, this is drawn to scale. Everything is scaled in there. But what we haven't done is the next step would be to lay it over the actual face of the earth and line up these lines. And until you do that portion, you don't know how well it fits. So will this portion need to be pushed around a little bit? Maybe so. But until you get to that level of sophistication in the drawings, you won't know. And we're talking about feet, we're not talking about hundreds of feet.
You are, because, I'm thinking about the rotary auction, farmer's market, all those things that are in there, are they going to be eaten into?
You mean the
by
actual
all this
common?
traffic?
Oh, the common?
The actual common
Yeah.
itself?
Yeah.
The only thing, the way I see it is you've got parking spots
Parking
on the
on the
back side, so
inside.
they can't, and then you'll have a curb going around the 27 side, so you don't have cars pulling in off in 27, backing out back onto 27.
So, are we talking about it being reduced 10%, 20%?
No, because anytime there's a function there now, people park there. We're just putting paved places instead of grass.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Rhoda Meyer, okay.
There are a few things I don't understand here. You said that no matter what happens, Mr. Cologne was going to put his entrance in a way so that it would have to go into Chapel Road or whatever that thing's called.
Across the street.
How is that possible that he was going to do that no matter what?
He's got the right to do what he wants.
All the way to
Only the
Chapel
state
Road?
says.
No, across the street. Across the street, he owns that property across the street.
And you pointed out on there, Jeff.
I understand.
So, for everybody to understand, this is Route 27. This is the gas station right here. This is Chapel Street. Right directly across is where it's proposed. Now, if the TIF is approved, and if the bond is approved, the town is in the driver's seat on how this entrance is managed. We don't get to pick where it goes. DOT gets to pick where it goes. But the traffic common devices that get implemented, we get to decide. If you vote no, DOT and Paul Coulomb decides, which I'm sure they're very tasteful. But I can tell a lot of stories about managing DOT projects, which I've done several.
It's a total separate issue from the monument.
Yes.
Totally separate
Oh,
issue.
yeah.
Correct.
And I don't think DOT will, you know, give him an okay to do that unless you deal with him. And that's right, that's what it appears to, you know, it's like you're forcing him to do the project just because this access needs to be given.
It's not. I mean, it's not driving this. This is the study that we used to develop this plan comes from 2002. I mean, this has been sitting on the shelves of the town of Boothbay, accepted by the selectmen a long time ago. It's not like this came out of nowhere. This has been around.
That brings me to my second question, which is that I don't understand how you can ask us to approve this now when, if I understand you correctly, you're saying that it's all going to be different anyhow, because this is just, you know.
But you're not approving this plan.
No, I know, but who is going to approve whatever you decide to do?
Ultimately, I believe the townspeople should.
Right.
Then why would we have to vote on this now?
Because we need to secure funds. It's got to just, I have no idea what a true engineer and to come up with a workable plan costs, but I'm sure it's not cheap.
What have we already spent to do this entire TIF plan and road plan?
Just the lawyer fees to develop the TIF, I would assume.
Yeah, you know, at least, which is our regular attorney, so we'd have to split up what is our regular attorney's cost. But, you know, it probably cost us $2,000 to put together the drafts of the TIF plan.
And to put that together?
We didn't put this
No,
together.
we had no part of
DOT did that years ago,
The DOT did that.
94 and 2002.
Well, let me tell you how this developed. Is that
Yeah, we didn't.
Coulomb was working on this section. That's why we split it off to make sure it's clear. Working on this section, getting preliminary permissions from DOT to build something. So, I mean, it's legitimate that DOT could allow this if they want to. And then we were having conversations with the developers. And we were talking about all the things they're running into. We're talking about TIFs and how that could work for the town's advantage. And what came out of that is, wow, you know, we have an old plan that represents changes that we'd like to do, but we've never had the funding to do them.
Who's the we?
The town of Boothbay. When I say we, I work for the town of Boothbay. I represent the town of Boothbay, so I generally speak in that
So
fashion.
you're talking about the selectmen, you're not talking about the people of the town necessarily.
The people of the town elect the selectmen to speak for them. So we had discussions about how we could incorporate some aspects of what they're going to have to do into what we would like to do going forward in the future. At that time, Malone and McBroom was working for the developer to come up with these sections. Malone and McBroom in 2002 worked for the town of Boothbay to develop this. It was a pretty easy put it together.
Well, Knickerbocker Group wasn't involved back in 2002, was it? I mean, it's named
No, but that's who Malone McBroom was working for now. When we came into this, that's who had this plan. Absolutely.
So we came into this, and that's how this really came to be.
Yep.
I think that we should wait until we know what the hell it's gonna be.
Is the town financing the sidewalk from the YMCA up to the park?
That is with the, it's a Safe Walkways to School grant, which means it's 80% funded by the federal government through the state. The town already has its share set aside, which is a fraction of that 20% because we're sharing with Boothbay Harbor and the Y.
Did they do any site development plans for
On
that?
the sidewalk?
project?
Yes, I have them all in my office if you'd like to see them.
Do they, you know, work out with any of this plan at all? Or?
Yeah, matter of fact, it works nicely. You can see the sidewalk. I had them draw in the sidewalk, and we represented it in the same way that it's in already designed.
Mm.
And it actually kind of fits kind of nicely because then we represented a new sidewalk, which isn't in the sidewalk plan right here. And actually, we've kind of talked informally about what if we made a sidewalk loop here and go over to the Center Cafe and get a pastry and then walk it off in the common, you know? Those are the things that we're talking about.
Yes, sir.
My name is Jim Coleman from Boothbay Harbor. I'm a resident of Dora since 1968, so I can't vote here in Boothbay, so bear with me.
Can you speak up?
Okay? I'm a resident of Boothbay Harbor. I've been here since 1968 as a summer resident. and I've now spent 5 months a year here in Boothbay Harbor. For some reason, I have the feeling we're not getting the message through, and I support the economic TIF issues. I would strongly urge a vote on 2 and 3, positive vote, to send a positive economic message to the region that you are doing things and you're encouraging economic growth. You happen to have somebody that came in and is investing a lot of money in the Boothbay Harbor Country Club, which is a tremendous asset for this region. You combine that as an attraction with the botanical gardens, it's a tremendous engine for growth. And if you send a message, a positive message to other businesses with this TIF, businesses for the industrial park, I think you're going to reap a lot of strong rewards from it. This plan here, from my understanding, if you vote positively on 2 and 3, you can go ahead and change that plan any way you want, right?
Yes.
Right. So they're not connected. The important thing is to vote for 2 and 3. The Maine is a wonderful state. It's why we come here. It's why a lot of people come here. This is a great region. But Maine is in economic difficulty. You have the oldest population in the United States. You rank 50th in business development friendliness. If you come here and you listen, you read the paper and so forth, and I was involved in my previous life as an executive of a company, involved in locating plants, where you can build a plant. The last place you'd ever go to build anything would be Maine, because of the regulations, the taxation, and the general negative attitude of a lot of the people of Maine against economic growth. A friend of mine once said Maine's economic development policy is just say no. And I think you've got to look at it. Another one was, this is where innovation comes to die. And this is the way the outside world looks at Maine. If you'd had positive economic growth over the last 10 years, you might still have a hospital here. The population has been flat. That may be a stretch. Okay, but you just wait, you're going to lose miles too. I'll bet you some money on that. You've got to grow. You've got to grow the area. You've got to send a positive message. Another area that's declining in Maine is the enrollment in the state universities. Where are the young people going? I mean, send a message that you're open for business and you're going to do the real things from a regulation, taxation point of view that shows you're open for business. Send a message to the youth of this region that they'll be able to stay here, they'll be able to get good jobs here. So I would strongly recommend that you send a positive message to people in the region, particularly the young people of the region, by voting in favor of 2 and 3. Thank you for allowing an outsider to speak.
I see his hand out the back.
I'd like Ann Arbor Boothbay. And Steve, I am interested in the business you spoke to, unnamed as it may remain. In terms of the limitations of the TIF, under state law, the TIF can be 2% of the town. Right now, the acres involved in the TIF proposal, it was exquisitely close. It's 1.997% of the town is in the TIF. So we've got 3/1,000ths of the town to work with. Can another location be included in this TIF in the future? And how is that done? Question 2, totally unrelated. We talk about how this development might occur in the future and who's going to be in charge. Right now, the way this reads, the Board of Selectmen drives the bus. It doesn't require any public input whatsoever. And at the previous meeting, talk was you have a form of committee, and that sounded great. My thinking is that if the Board of Selectmen was of a mind to have a committee, it would be in here already. My second question is, if such a committee is formed, will that committee have a vote, or will it simply be an advisory committee and the Board of Selectmen will continue driving the bus? Appreciate your comments.
So, the committee really doesn't have anything to do with the TIF. You know,
the other question,
right.
I understand.
The boundaries can be moved, I believe, of the TIF by a vote of, at town meeting, not by us.
You can take parcels out and include others,
Right.
but it has to go
I'm
to
sorry.
You can take parcels out and include others, but it has to go to town meeting vote.
Okay, you change the geography.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And another question was,
The other question involved, committee involvement, we're talking about the Rotary. I have to mention, I live in Woodville, and there's a new state Rotary at the junction of Route 15 and Route 75, and it is the laughing stock of the town. They put up funny sculptures, there's a big stand there last Christmas and all. And nobody really knows how to use it and all. And it looks like the Rotary's out of the question anyway. If you want to go see one, there's one down in Bath just below the Holiday Inn I stumbled across just last week. And you drive up to it. And part of it is none of us know how to use them. It's just a matter of familiarity. They may or may not be the solution. My question really is, when the village improvement plan is being written, right now, the way these documents are written, the Board of Selectmen have complete control. Clearly, the Board of Selectmen serve in the middle of the town, and the town has the right to have input. We talked about forming a committee. Will that committee have voting power or simply advisory power to the Board of Selectmen is my question.
the way I see it, I mean, I can't speak for the rest of these guys, but you would have a committee that would be an advisory committee. But would we have the final say on if we was going to put a rotary in the middle of Route 27? My opinion is, I'm not making that decision. The voters need to. You know, I think you would put it on a referendum or a town meeting. I think that's the only way you could do it.
But in other words, just to clarify, there's no process for forming this committee. There's no legality of the authority of the committee versus the authority of the selectmen. It's kind of up in the air.
Yes.
So it's another unknown
Yes.
within the question.
Now, as far as one other thing, I mean, I've given it a lot of thought after the last meeting, and I mean, Chuck had mentioned the selectmen having complete control over. Now we're talking TIFs, not this. So I mean, we keep bouncing back and forth, and I apologize about the selectmen having complete control over passing out or handing out or arranging credit enhancement agreements. This particular, the Boothbay Harbor Country Club, there is no credit enhancement agreement, but the argument can be made that whether it be this Board of Selectmen or Board of Selectmen 10 years from now, a business could come along and say, hey, we want to build in there, and the Board of Selectmen would have the authority. They could be a stretch, but they could do 100% credit enhancement, meaning that every bit of money they get, that they pay in taxes, the Board of Selectmen could agree to turn it back, and I don't agree with that. You know, I argued with Chuck 2 weeks ago about how I see it happening, but I'm not going to be here forever, as well as none of us are. I think that needs to be changed, and I think one way of changing it, and I talked to Jim actually this afternoon about it, because you can't, why take a good document and shoot it down because it's got one problem? The easiest way to remedy that is to pass some sort of a resolution or something and say, we will put a moratorium on all credit enhancement agreements until we get something that the voters can prove. I think that's a quick and easy fix, because that's the fair way of doing it. There's nothing that we're trying to do underhandedly to try to sneak something through. It was something that was in there that we didn't realize. We're willing to admit that, fix it, and move on. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, me again, Rebel Wire. About being business friendly here. I think the golf club is perfect for this area. I think that Hodgson Yards is, and the other building, Washburn and Doty, and the Botanical Gardens. But what are you thinking could come in an industrial way to make it a bigger hiring town and a better place for our kids to stay and work? I know that you don't I know that you don't want to say any business that's currently talking to you, but I believe you have estimated how many jobs that business would bring in. It was 5 to 7, am I correct? Well, that's not going to do a whole lot for our kids and our future.
I don't disagree, but without the TIF district, in place, it doesn't give you that tool to try to lure jobs in. Can I look into a crystal ball and see any businesses? No, but boy, it sure would be nice. I mean, I'm from the area. I'm fortunate enough to have a job that kept me in the area. I have kids. They're going to have kids. The last thing I want to see is my kids have to move out of town or out of state, and I see them on holidays because there is no jobs in the state of Maine. We're trying to look to the future. Well, I understand you disagree with me. We had this conversation today, but I feel differently. I don't want my kids living in England or California. I want them living close to home. When I have grandkids, I want to be able to go see them. That's me personally.
Don't you want your kids living where they want to live in terms of
Absolutely.
for their future?
Absolutely, and my kids love it here.
And why
Sorry to
can't,
make this comment.
but why can't that be here?
Yeah, why couldn't that be
But
here?
why can't that be here?
Okay, I'll speak for a moment about why I believe this gentleman is totally incorrect and that he's got the wrong vision.
Wait,
No,
before,
I'm
wait,
going to.
we
I'm
need-
going
we
to
need-
respond. I have the
excuse
floor,
me.
sir. I will respond to your question in a moment, if you give me just a moment. Because they're all related, you know, and we have really two different visions at play here and at play in the voting population of Boothbay Oct.
on respect as well.
Boothbay, yes, and one has been ably represented by this gentleman and by our chair and by this and that vision looks to the development of Boothbay in a business-friendly way that creates industrial businesses, small office buildings, big signs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we discussed this last week, and I understand where those people are coming from and where this gentleman is coming from. I'm not coming from that point of view at all. I'm coming from the point of view that says that we have an immensely valuable resource here, and we should be using it in a creative and thoughtful way. I think this master plan, the village improvement plan, which as you say is somewhat separate, but the master plan represents the wrong road to go down. That it will not, in the end, produce what you think it will produce, but even if it does, it will change radically the character of Boothbay and of our lives here. In the worst possible scenario, you will have a strip mall along Route 27. I mean, that's the worst possible scenario.
That's
It's not
a
going to
stretch.
happen. I grant it's not going to happen. Frankly, I think very little will happen. We'll get a few small businesses here and so forth. Now, I have a vision of Boothbay that points to economic opportunity, but it has to do with the resources that we have and what makes us a wonderful and attractive place. It means keeping the character, the New England character, the small town character of what we have, but building on it. And building on it in terms of the resources that we have. And we have a tremendous number of resources, but they're not in the direction of bringing in businesses from wherever, plants and what have you. I don't think they'll come, and if they come, they'll change the character of our community immensely. So I would like to put our creative minds to work in terms of developing the resources that we have. And the resources that we have relate to the attractiveness and the beauty of the area and what we can do to expand and publicize those and bring the kinds of people who appreciate those things and will come and live here and be a part of our community. One last comment, because I don't want to do what I did at the last meeting and go on. That's in response to those who out of the goodness of their hearts and their love as parents, to expand businesses here so that their children can have good jobs. I don't think there will be good jobs. There'll always be mostly seasonal jobs here.
I totally disagree with you.
Yeah, no, it's okay, I understand.
I'm going to expand my business and I'm going to employ people.
Yes, and there'll be another 5 or 7 or 10 or 15. I think we need to work on our educational system, on our counseling. We've got a lot of things that we need to work on, because it's a big.
What would be the point
It's a
if
big-
all the kids are gonna be gone? This is strictly gonna become a retirement village.
All the kids will not be gone, a certain number will stay, and a certain number will go out into the world, and they'll get educations, they'll get vocational educations, they'll get industrial, high-tool technology educations, they'll become lawyers and doctors, they'll experience the world, they'll grow, they'll feel richer in terms of their own selves and their spirits, they'll have good jobs wherever they are, some will come back and find ways to.
All I can really say is I'm glad most of this peninsula does not have your philosophy. I am sorry.
I understand.
Honest to God, I want to apologize for my reaction because I'm really frustrated in listening to your short-sightedness and negativity about anything positive we're trying to do here.
Well, because I think it's a terrible plan. That's the bottom line. I think there are good plans that are possible. I think this one is.
We've heard enough about what you're saying.
That is enough.
This gentleman is not.
That isn't-
This is not personal, sir. This is not a question.
It's personal.
Why is it personal?
I have a family, a life, and a business here. It is very personal to try to make a living
I want you
every
to-
day for my son and for me, and to be told that my business can only be in one place, and then that place gets haggled and hassled. I'm not even on the coast. You can have your coast. Just give us a place to get something done for you guys.
Well, I'm all in favor of that. Well,
Alex.
I've not spoken against
Alex.
you having a flourishing business. I want you to do that. Thank you.
Steve, you're cutting off.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
People refer to, well, it's only 5 or 7 jobs. You gotta start someplace.
Thank you very much.
We're not talking about building an automobile assembly plant or a steel mill.
None of us
You
are.
lost a medical device manufacturer out of your industrial park down here. It went to Wisconsin. I think there's some empty buildings in the industrial park down there.
74 jobs.
Yeah, 74 jobs. There's nothing wrong in
Why
that
did
industrial
we
park.
lose them? Why did, I just want to.
It would be, let him finish, please.
I'm not positive why they left. Maybe they needed a
Narrow
bigger
minded
building, who
people,
knows,
some
but they
of them
left.
water and sewer.
There's not enough reason for them to stay, and now they're expanding again at Brunswick. They didn't decide to expand back here. You have to create a positive attitude, a welcoming attitude. 5 to 7 jobs, 10 to 15, they add up.
Honest to
Maybe
God.
you could
in
have,
my-
maybe, let me just
in my
finish a
own-
minute. Maybe you could have a conference center, and you could have some year-round employment here.
That would be good.
Those are opportunities, and.
But they have nothing to do with the TIF. The TIF and the
Yes,
bond
they do
issue.
have something to do with businesses here.
How do you?
Have the back.
Yes, I'm sorry.
The industrial park is included in the TIF, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yes, so it does have something to do with the TIF.
If you can direct speaking this way,
Yes, speak
please.
up, please.
That way we're not going back and forth. Dale, do you wanna?
I'm advocating the TIF. How you work this out, I'm sure there are enough smart people and enough cooperative people that can get together and come up with a nice improvement plan for the Rotary, the traffic circle, the village green, and so forth. The key to the future here is the TIF and taking advantage of an opportunity that showed up when Paul Cologne bought that country club, which was going broke and it was about to be repossessed by the bank. He showed up with enough funds to make it into a first-class operation. And I think what you're doing is developing and expanding off of that to benefit the rest of the community and offer incentives and other things for other businesses here. Thank you.
That's right. And to expand on that, the reality of it is that there's 5 members up here, none of which are engineers, and I'm not trying to step on any of us here. We're a bunch of humble guys that are looking out for a philosophy, a thought, a wishful thinking. And if I get 100 jobs out of the industrial park through a TIF, I would be ecstatic that I produced 100 year-round jobs in this house, in this town. The reality of it is we might not get 100 jobs, we might get 10, we might not get any, but at least we tried. I mean, I guess that's one of the things that's most frustrating to me is that there's 5 guys up here trying to do something good for this town. Now, you might not like the design of the plant. This is, we all hate this Rotary thing. We all look at this and say, we wish we wouldn't have put anything out there because by putting nothing out there, you wouldn't have anything to complain about. But we felt it was only fair to give you something to say, this is a thought. We're willing to listen to everybody. We want everybody's input. We want you to be involved in this. We don't want to take the lead and the ship. Yeah, I mean, great. You might get my signature on the end of it when everybody else approves at it, when everybody else has input on it, when everybody else has a say in how this is all developed. You might get my signature on the end. Whoop-dee. I want everybody involved. I want Boothbay Harbor, Southport, obviously Boothbay residents, and we just think we're doing something very positive for the town. Is it perfect? No. Was it a little bit rushed? Absolutely. Can we change it? Steve's proposal about putting a moratorium on the TIF, even before it's even voted on, a preliminary moratorium on it, fine. We recognize there's flaws. It is not perfect, but it was the best we could produce in a matter of a month and a half or 2 months that we had to do it. I really don't like being up on a soapbox here trying to plead this, but I just listen to the nay. Oh, well, we can only be 6 months out of the year. We can only do jobs for 6 months out of the year. And the rest of the 6 months, we suffer. My kids can't stay here if I want them to, or more importantly, if they want to. If my kids want to stay here. Because as me, I love this town. And if they want to stay here, I'd like to have them have a job that they can go to every day without having to drive 45 minutes to an hour to go some other place to find a halfway decent paying job. It's a thought. It's a wish. The last meeting, you said something about, what are you going to get? 4 or 5 jobs? Maybe. But my wish is we can get 100. My hopes is we can get 300. Reality, we might get 20, and I'll take 20. I'd take 2. But at least we tried. We didn't just sit on our hands and say we didn't do anything. We tried.
Absolutely.
We'll let you first. You haven't spoken.
Hi, thank you. My name is Alex Shu, Esoteric Woodworks. I live on Route 27 in the business district. I live there with my wife and my newborn child. I apologize for my emotional outburst earlier. It's disrespectful for everybody in this room and to the board. But like you said, I hear nay. And here's something where people are trying. Some community people get together and said, this guy's gonna blow a whole crap load of money. He's gonna do it. Let's take some of that money, let's use it for the town. Let's use it to support jobs and infrastructure. Let's not, and specifically said, not supporting this private enterprise and supporting public infrastructure for people in the business district that this is laid out for. We've been driven to this area. My family's lived in this area for 150 years. It wasn't always a business district. It's been voted into one, and I see them coming into there now. It's all we got left. I left this town. I went to get an education somewhere else. I started a business somewhere else. I looked at where I was, and I was very unhappy. I said, where was I happy? I was happy in my town. I brought my business back here. I started a family here. I love this place. I want my kids to be here. I want my kids to start business here. I work for a business here. That's what it's about. I live next to the industrial park. 74 jobs were created somewhere else and not in this industrial park. Because the community didn't support infrastructure to help that business out at all. It didn't. It was based on results. If you want to look at the results, look at the results of our school. Look at the results of the children that are here now. There's no families here, there's no children here. The classes are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. That is the result. You're talking about what ifs. This is the result. We can be this mixed community of young and old and business and people working for other people. We don't just have to be one thing or the other. This is how we're going to get there. I got plenty of complaints about this. This absolutely. Don't you all? Don't we all? This is an idea. Somebody's got to step forward and take the first stone. That's taking the first stone. It's taking many stones. I fully support a committee that has a vote to say something about this, but please support the TIF district. Please support the hard work that community members who showed up to meetings and took time out of their own lives to work on ordinance review so that we can all be a mixed community, supporting each other as a community. Thank you very much for letting us speak.
I'm gonna call on him, he hasn't spoken yet, I mean, I'll get to you, I promise. I'm not avoiding you.
Mike Tomaselli, business owner, Boothbay Industrial Park. I just want to share with everyone what I've seen there. I've been in that industrial park since 1990. I was the second one in the industrial park. And directly across the street from me was a company called Rhinell. And to give you a little history, back in Rhinell started in 1987 in the industrial park. In 1990, when I moved there, they probably had about 10 employees. I saw them go up and down in their business cycle, probably for about 7 or 8 years. Then, in the late 90s, they started to grow. They developed products. They went up to about 30 employees. They had a need to expand. They needed to expand. They needed to double their capacity. They had the real estate to do it. They had the manpower to do it. Technology was there. Everything was in their favor, dealing with companies internationally. And they needed one thing. They needed water. They needed water up there to expand. And they asked for it. And for whatever reason, I don't have the answer, it didn't happen. Shortly thereafter, they started to look for other locations. They went to Wiscasset. Wiscasset took them with open arms. They gave them everything they wanted to. They have the ability right now, the plans in place, to expand their 40,000 square foot facility by 5 times. They were bought out by their #1 customer, a company called Molinique in Finland. Molinique and Rhinell jointly looked at where they were, where they wanted to go. They decided to expand the main weather station. They just put up a 40,000 square foot facility there. Alex, your numbers are wrong. They're closer to 125 employees right now.
Thank you.
Both of those businesses.
Thank you.
Additionally, they just purchased another company in the Midwest. And they've been looking for a place to locate that business. I passed that on to Jim. Jim contacted them. If certain things were in place in this town, in this industrial park, they might be into it. They might have come back into it. That's a loss for this community. Should never ever happen again. That's jobs, good paying jobs, benefits, people that would be, have purchased real estate here, be living in this community. I'm sorry, I saw it happen. It's a great disappointment to me. It should be all of us in this community who let that happen. Thank you.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but I believe Wiscasset created a TIF district
Yep.
for Rhinell to get them to go to Wiscasset.
That's correct.
Just an interesting side note. Did you,
Did you say they created a TIF district back then, or?
back then?
I
Back
thought
then,
they were
they-
just creating one now for them.
I don't know, I know they're in a TIF district.
They've been in the TIF district since they moved here.
Right, because I think they're trying to
created that
increase it. I believe, I don't,
Yeah, 'cause I saw something in the paper about it.
I don't think the TIF district's boundaries go beyond where they'd like to expand, so they would expand out of the TIF district.
yes, ma'am.
I won't do this again, I promise, but I just wanted to say that those of us who are against this plan are not against it so that people cannot find work and not find homes for their kids or anything like that. On the contrary, we just think that you're looking for, you're not really looking for because you're just waiting to see what comes your way. But what you're concentrating on are businesses that don't fit this place, like Hodgdon does, like Washburn does, like the Botanical Gardens does. You know, we've got certain advantages here, and one of them is not that we are near an airport, that we are near a major highway, that we are, you know, we don't have that. We've got to work with what we've got and not pretend that we're something else, and that's why I'm against it.
Can I respond a little bit?
Absolutely.
Because first of all, let me tell you who's responsible for the village improvement plan as it's been presented. And that's me, the PFA that got hired to run the business of the town. It was kind of I advised the selectmen, if we're gonna ask for $2.5 million, we gotta put something out in front of them. I didn't realize we'd get so much heat for a preliminary concept, so I'm sorry to the selectmen for making you take so much heat. But that's why the selectmen employ me. Come up with ideas and we'll flush out how they really work to our locality. So we're gonna vote on some aspects, not this, but then we'll have a process and we'll figure out what fits. But I'd like to take the pressure off the selectmen about being responsible for the village improvement plan. This is my idea to come forward with it, okay? But let's talk about economic development. That's another aspect of my job. The selectmen hired me and said, this is important to us, and I think they hired me on the merits of economic development I've done in the past. Well, economic development gets a bad light, and the people think that you're bringing in some crazy business that's not going to fit in our town. The industrial park, also a bad idea was to name it the Industrial Park Road. Okay? Commercial park, business park, something else, because I don't know about you, but there are hardly any industrial presence in there. And if you look at the zoning ordinance, it's hardly zoned for industrial type things. Well, we're proposing to allow more business improvement in the district. Now those businesses are going to be the Betts Fish Fry, the Cottage Connection, the Thomas, I don't know, Thomaselli's business, Mike Elkin's business. Businesses that already fit in the town of Boothbay are going to be the types of businesses that prosper. It's already been proven that they can work without the incentives. They're going to get bigger and better with incentives. And other businesses that align are going to fit in there too. If your concern is that, I used to work for Interstate Bakeries Corporation, the J.J. Nissen, with a great big huge industrial baking facility. If you think they're going to move into the industrial park, it's not going to happen. You're not going to get a true industrial fit there. So when we're talking about economic development, we're talking about, and I'm sorry, I'm pointing out people that are in here, the brewery, the Win Mitchell's Brewery, those businesses that already exist, those are the things that are going to develop in the TIF district. Those are the things that we expect to grow and to prosper, because it's already zoned for those types of businesses.
Another interesting point of a TIF district. You could develop that TIF district tomorrow. It costs the town zero money to develop a TIF district. Nothing. I mean, there is no, the only time it would cost the town money is if we decide to do a credit enhancement agreement. I mean, to actually create that TIF district, there is zero cost. Am I wrong?
No, you have legal cost.
Legal costs, but honestly,
Minimal amount of money.
honestly, we were trying to take a very complicated spin on a TIF district, and that's why we invested legal funds in it, because we're trying to make it expansive and with all these business developments and loop in a lot of different ideas. And at that point in time, you're looking at TIF law and you're like, it's very complicated. Let's bring on the attorney, make sure it's done right. Honestly, we could take this TIF district that we've written up, we could go to a different part of town, and we could fix that document and make it fit wherever we want it to. So I mean, we've invested in something we have forever, is that TIF document. Even if voted down, it's going to be something that goes into a file in the town of Boothbay that we'll use in the future as a valuable document to at least learn from.
Again, unless you offer a question, my sense of it, perhaps this is not correct, my sense of it is that unless you offer an enhancement agreement, that is a rebate on taxes, if you will, to a business in the TIF district, or one that comes, what advantage is there to the business to have a TIF district or not to have a TIF district? None at all.
But my point being is, it costs you nothing to create it. If a business comes along that's going to create 20 jobs, just say 20, just for a round figure. At that point, it would give the town the option to negotiate a credit enhancement agreement at the time. Because the TIF district is in place. You can't just negotiate a credit enhancement agreement if there is no TIF. You have to have the TIF district in order to be able to have a credit enhancement agreement. They go kind of hand in hand.
Then you're assuming that a new business will only come to the TIF district if they're offered an enhancement arrangement that is a rebate against their taxes.
Well, it sure is a great incentive. I mean, if you have a chance to move a business from Maine or New Hampshire, and Maine says, I'll give you a 20% tax credit, and New Hampshire says, I'll give you a 40% tax credit, where are you going?
So your hope for getting new businesses, your hope, the selectmen's hope for getting new businesses then is based upon the assumption that you will be offering enhancement agreements, that is tax rebates, to lure businesses to come here.
We won't, the voters will.
Can I start?
Am I-
Sure.
So there's a lot of benefits to TIF districts other than credit enhancement agreements. The credit enhancement agreements get the bad light. They get the, tax kickbacks, So they get all the bad press. But we were talking about Rhinell, and the reason why Rhinell couldn't expand there is they didn't have water, right? And the town went to a vote and said, can we expand water up there? The town said, no, bad deal. And whatever the reason was for that being a bad deal, I can understand. The town voted and they said no. Well, the TIF district allows these TIF funds to go in that pool. If a business, if Rhinell came to us right now and said, we want to entertain it again, can you build water there? We could take the new value that they're going to put in there, the taxes that come up, we could build water with their taxes that they're going to pay to get them in that town so the jobs are there. That's an allowable expense. Now, there may not be a Rhinell out there. There might be a smaller business that might have, say we need, you don't have 3-phase power going to a section where I locate my business, but I'd do it in a heartbeat. The town could pay for the public extension of the 3-phase power so that business could locate there. That's another benefit. There are other things.
With voter approval.
With voter approval, every appropriation has to go through the same process. This doesn't distort those rules. Economic development is allowed all throughout the town with TIF district money. That's an allowable expense. One of the things that the Industrial Park Planning Committee has been working on is, can we put together a brochure or an e-brochure that we put on our website that says why your business should be in the industrial park? Remember, I hate the name, business park or whatever. But why should you be there? We got low taxes. They're stable. Before this year, when the state kicked us in the teeth, 5 years of the same tax rate. So, we have great quality of life here. This is a great place to raise your kids. We've got a great school system, great location. So those are reasons why you want to put your business there. The Industrial Park Planning Committee could come to the selectmen and say, can we use some money to do that e-brochure to attract people in that area? One idea that I'd like the selectmen to entertain in the future, in the light of economic development, we could create a small business revolving loan fund with TIF proceeds. Take $50,000, $100,000, get an arrangement with a bank, the First Bank of Maine, somebody local, and say, we'd like you to manage our small business revolving loan fund. They give out $10,000 loans, they pay interest on it, the interest pays back the loan, goes out to somebody else. You get 5, 6 businesses with $10,000 loans. Maybe that $10,000 is enough to buy their sign. Get the startup capital so that they can continue running. So there's lots of aspects to economic development, but where do those funds come from without a TIF? They come from the taxpayer. And honestly, the taxpayer in this day and age, especially with the kick in the teeth we got this last year from the state of Maine on revenue sharing and education aid, they're going to say, no, we pay too much already. We're not going to free up $10,000 to do an e-brochure. We're not going to put away $50,000 for a revolving loan fund. So this is an opportunity.
But just to follow up on my same question to Jim, am I right in thinking that there is no TIF money unless businesses come into the TIF district that are not already there?
If the TIF gets approved, there's going to be TIF money from the Boothbay Harbor Country Club.
But that has to go to pay off the bond.
All but
now you're
1.2.
generating more money from that? That wasn't in your figure?
Oh yeah, it's been that way all along. 1.3.
1.4 million more.
1.4 million.
More than the bond.
Course of 30 years.
But
That's the last 10 years.
The conservative estimates say that the TIF can generate $4.7 million. Total cost of the bond is $3.5 million. With conservative estimates, there's $1.2 million left. Now that's just Boothbay Harbor Country Club growth. If another business goes in, creates more growth, creates more TIF funds, creates more potential.
And Fred, that's set at today's mill rate of 8.4. If the mill rate goes up, more money goes into it as well. I have to say, one of the things that I am encouraged with, Stevie and I went back and forth at the last public hearing and meeting about the credit enhancement agreements. And credit enhancement agreements aren't a bad thing. We've proven that with Washburn and with Hutchins. My biggest problem with it was the fact that it wasn't going back to you, the voters, to be looked at. And it sounds like Stevie has decided for himself anyway that he thinks there should be a moratorium on any credit enhancement agreements if this passes, so that that can be fixed until May. That's a good idea if it passes.
I mean, we all knew that. I mean, it's typical with any ordinance the town of Boothbay has ever passed. If they put the perfect one forward the first time, we'd never have to ever have ordinance review again. We've got a boatload of them on the November 5th ballot because they found problems with it. You're going to find problems with any document that's more than one page. You're just gonna.
I will say this, and I don't mean to beat a dead horse. This process has been rushed, and these are conversations that we should have been having long before the 11th hour.
I agree. Unfortunately, it's been handed to us. I mean, I hate to use the term, you don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth, but I mean, that money is sitting there for us to capture this year. Did you get one done? Can I have that?
You're also up against the state bond.
Right.
Which is what's rushing it.
Yeah, the state bond issue is on the 5th as well, which would line us up to get the funds to pay for half of this. And without the funds lined up, the first thing the state's going to say to you is, do you have the funds? Well, we hope to get them at voter approval. We'll hope, again, using your term, hope is kind of wishful thinking, the state's going to move on. If we say, yes, we have the money, then we're going to be at the top of the list. Yes, sir.
Am I correct that the DECD is supposed to approve all TIFs? You have to submit it to them?
Yes.
Has it been submitted?
They will not do the formal review until it's passed, but they've already seen
So it's in their hand?
And they're looking for statutory compliance.
Okay. And how long after, if this passes, will it take for them to say yay, nay, or go back to the drawing board and provide more information?
On their website, it says that TIF proposals have to be received by March 1st, probably because of that April 1st deadline. So I would imply that it takes them 30 days. But then I'd also go one step further and say everything that goes through DECD lately takes a little bit longer.
So there's a time frame for the monies for matching funds, which I understood matching funds to me means if we're going to do a bond issue for 2.5, they're going to match 2.5, and I'm hearing 1.5 or something like that.
We're hoping
So
to
that's two questions, but I'm still trying to figure out what time frame we're looking at, because they've got to approve it before you can go forward.
Yes.
My understanding is if you don't get matching funds, it's a dead issue. Is that correct?
It has been all along.
Yes.
I mean, we're not gonna go and borrow, we're not gonna go and borrow $2.5 million unless the TIF's approved.
I don't understand that.
And if we're not gonna go just take $2.5 million on our own without having some kind of funds to be, and we're hoping for matching funds. Realistically, yeah, I'd love to see $2.5 million. We don't know if we're gonna get that or not, but it's gotta be worth our while.
We don't even know the project cost.
I understand that.
Um,
But I heard you say to me,
Right.
matching funds. Well, matching funds to me means equitable.
Mhm.
Equitable means
Between the
2.5 and 2.5. It doesn't mean.
But there's
2.5
other,
and
right,
1.5.
there's other money out there as well besides the transportation bond. There's the what is they call it? I'm sorry.
Department of Economic and Community Development has a public infrastructure grant of $500,000. I mean, if we play our cards right, we could get 1.5, maybe a little more, if we play our cards right.
So it's really not matching funds. It's a portion of a matching.
But reality, I
It
mean,
is if the project's a $2.5, $3 million.
we went into it
If we go for a
expecting
bond
the
for
worst.
2.5, we're there for 2.5.
No.
No.
If you vote for 2.5 and
need
it
to
comes in
borrow.
at 4, and we have 2, we only have to take it for 2. We asked
Yeah,
for
okay.
the amount that
So
we
that's
said.
the maximum.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're not going to
understand.
execute a bond, number 1, without any money to back it. Number 2, without a TIF. I mean, we asked for the maximum, but boy, I would sure love to only have to take one out for 100,000. You know, depending on what it is and what that final plan comes in at.
But I was thinking about, and I'm not getting it clear evidently, there's a time frame for each of these things. The reason we're rushing this is to try to get matching funds. There's a date for matching funds, right?
November 5th, that day when you vote on the $100 million transportation bond, if that's approved, $9 million of that goes into a program that we've targeted. That's going to go fast. And if you're not in the front of the line saying, we have our money in hand, you're not gonna get it.
But if DECD has not approved the TIF, then maybe I just
Yeah, but you don't,
understand.
yeah, but you don't
I'm
get the
thinking
money,
of-
the
That's
day
why we
of,
get the preliminary approval.
Pardon?
That's why we got the preliminary approval. Matter of fact, I'm gonna forget her name. Everybody calls her Smitty at DECD. But she's already looked at ours and she made a couple of tweaks and we've incorporated those. So, I mean, she's already given us edits to do. It's gonna be a slam dunk. DECD is probably gonna give us some temporary approval until they give us permanent approval. Those things are done all the time in major projects where they're saying, okay, your matching funds are here, but the bond's not issued, so you might have to do interim financing. These are things that we do all the time with major projects. We're sure that we've lined up these issues.
yes, sir.
If for whatever reason it doesn't get approved, then we would end up with an unfunded TIF and no request for bond money, I would assume. I mean, if we do run into a snag all the time, I mean, it's not like November 6th, you guys are gonna run out to a bank and apply for 2.5 million.
Well, it's not like
Some
this-
other things have to happen, but some things have to happen before to set it up.
It's not like the state on November 5th says, okay, Boothbay, you're approved, and writes you a check.
Right.
Government don't work that quick.
The law says we have to do a financial advisor
Right.
process. There's a lot of pieces to this that are.
So if it goes through everything in DECD says,
I think
No.
most likely, best case scenario would be spring.
But the reality of it is you gotta get the applications and everything in, right, I mean, on November 5th is the date of the vote. November 6th, we'd like to be able to be submitting at least an application at that point in time,
The
saying we,
application's there, right?
The application is being drafted, we're gonna submit it before the 5th. And if the vote is no, we're gonna say, oh, that application on your desk, just tear it up, Gary.
What happens in a situation where, if the voters decide to authorize the bond at the state level, and the governor decides not to authorize that bond at the state level, what happens to it then?
These are all decisions that need to be figured out. There's a lot of moving parts. So if we have authority for a $2.5 million bond, but there's no assurity of matching funds, and then you guys have a decision to make on what you want to do. And I think it's an easy one.
Yeah, you don't take out a bond without getting the state money. I mean, I think that's been our stance all along. I would like to, I don't know if you've all, Jim just handed out the resolution, but I would like to pass that later on. That just covers us at the base cost. If it is approved November 5th, we've passed a resolution stopping us from passing out credit enhancement agreements until we have something in place that limits them.
Is the resolution legally binding?
Fair question.
No, it's politically minded, that's all.
But it's not legally binding.
The only moratorium that can be legally binding would be something you pass at town meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Mel Thurp from East Boothbay. And so my question is, with all of these different moving parts and pieces, is there an intent to put forward a timeline for all of the voters to be able to see in doing big projects? One of the things I typically do is put forward a clear timeline, all the expectations, who's responsible for them. And I think in terms of trying to bring this whole concept forward for people to vote on it in a rational way, seeing a level of organization that looks like it will be successful would make a big difference in having an informed voter make an informed choice. Thank you.
Yes.
So one of the things that I have in my email inbox is an email from the traffic engineer that we want to do the stakeholder process for designing the village improvement plan, and that's exactly what we've outlined, except for he won't put it in its final form until I sign off on a quote for cost, and I'm not going to sign off on a quote for cost until I know that there's a reasonable chance that we should do it. So we're stuck right now on authorities, but we have a decent idea that it's going to probably take a stakeholder process to put together a final plan, probably about 3 months to figure this out. And the other aspects, the authorities and the permissions, I could put together a timeline relatively quickly, because most of the responsibilities fall on the administrator.
Does that answer your, sort of? Any more? Everyone has gone quiet.
If, I would recommend to you guys, if you're inclined to do a resolution like that, I would do it now while you have center stage.
We're always on center stage, Jim.
I just think, I mean,
Seems like it.
like Jim said, I mean, it's not legally binding, but I'll tell you what, if we passed this and then we went ahead and did a credit enhancement agreement the second week in November, I think we would all be linked when we walked outside. But I just think that it's a sign, I think it's a good sign of good
Intent.
faith. Exactly,
Intent.
with the intent of changing it come the next town meeting.
You want me to read it?
Yes, please.
Okay. So Steve asked me, he was concerned about this, our credit enhancement agreement's gonna kill the TIF. And he's like, what can we do? And I said, well, you could resolve to do no credit enhancement agreements until you amend the TIF. Because now if you put off the TIF approval, then you're gonna lose a lot of funding in that. You're gonna lose about 40% of the funding. So I put together this resolution in that spirit, and it really says that the selectmen resolve, express a desire to amend or modify the Boothbay Village and Industrial Park tax increment finance district prior to the adoption, but without interrupting the proposed vote on November 5th, whereas the selectmen have designated the TIF district, complied with posted requirements, conducted public hearings, and proposed an article number 2 on the special town meeting warrant on November 5th, and whereas the public has presented reasonable opposition to the component of the TIF number 3 in regards to credit enhancement agreements authorized by the Board of Selectmen instead of town meeting, and whereas amending the municipal or TIF 3 would delay a town meeting vote, which would result in the loss of 40% of TIF funds and tax shift protection, and whereas the Board of Selectmen agree voluntarily by majority vote to amend the TIF District Number 3 at the next town meeting. So be it therefore resolved that the Town of Boothbay Board of Selectmen mandate a moratorium on credit enhancement agreements until a TIF policy or amended municipal development and tax increment financing District Number 3 is approved by town meeting authority after November 5th. And then finally resolved that the Town of Boothbay Board of Selectmen will present an amended municipal TIF number 3 for town meeting approval on May 5th, 2014 that changes the permissions in the TIF district and grant and credit enhancement agreements to town meeting authority. So we'll put this on display if they adopt it.
So, first and foremost, no, this isn't legally binding, but we're only gonna make it with this 5-member board until May 5th. And I can be sure that I would certainly hold true to this resolution.
Absolutely.
I can guarantee you that I will.
So there's 3 of us.
There's 3.
I make a motion to approve this
I move we
resolution.
approve the resolution.
Well, I think we both just did, so,
Second.
all
As
right.
you said, so a motion's been made and seconded to approve the resolution. Any more discussion?
The only thing I would say is, I would applaud the board for moving forward with this and listening to the people and realizing some of what they want anyway, and we still got a lot of work to do. I just wish this was figured out much earlier than the 11th hour. And we need to figure out a way not to be rushing all this stuff the way we're rushing. As we found out here and years ago when we worked on water and sewer, we need to make sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed before we do anything. And I'm going to support this because even if it does pass on November 5th, it's going to need to be revised.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? One other interesting side note of the whole thing is after our last meeting, and Chuck and I went back and I went to him the next day and I said, the more I think about the whole selectmen getting the credit enhancement authority without going to the voters, I said, I don't see this board making a bad decision. But Chuck has a good point. 3 years down the line, it could be a whole new board, and you don't always have that. You know what I mean? That good feeling, I guess is the way to put it. So it does make sense.
You end up with a
let-
board of negative people that moved in from away. And then there'll be no economic development whatsoever.
You could end up,
Yeah,
oh, is this the
that's the one we saw.
But unfortunately, moving ahead so fast, if we tried to put the whole TIF off until May, we would lose how much? 6 or 7?
40% of 4.7 million, it comes out to 2.
It would make it so at that, it would make it at that point pretty hard. If you wanted to borrow a bond in the coming, the TIF wouldn't pay for it at that
You
point.
can't lose what you don't have.
Well, no, you don't understand what I was, if you would listen to what I was saying, what I said is, you don't lose money, I agree, but you do not have the ability at that point to take out a bond and pay for it absolutely with zero cost to the taxpayer. If we wait on the TIF and you lose that extra money
I
captured,
understand.
you no longer have the money to pay that bond free and clear. You would, if you did a bond at that point, you would have to put it in the assessment to the town, and it would make your taxes go up. That's what I was saying. Okay, I think public meeting is over.
Public hearing.
Public hearing, sorry. Next up is public comment.
Who did this agenda anyway?
Okay, moving on. Next up is the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting of 10/9. Geez, I think he's gonna shut off. Excuse me, we're trying. Next up is the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting of 10/9/2013.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded, and all those in favor? Douglas abstained because he wasn't here. I remember.
How did you miss that meeting, Douglas?
Next
I
up
know
is
you.
reports, Jim.
First report
that's what I started
is our
to say.
discussion about the CSD's borrowing authority on the tennis courts. As you guys instructed, I contacted the superintendent, invited the CSD trustees to our meeting. They obviously couldn't come here. I sent out that email to let you guys know. They've invited us to come to their November 6th meeting at 5:15 in the high school library. I thought, even though it's under reports, we could determine whether we plan on attending.
You also stated that they had a legal opinion that they can borrow the money, they did everything correct. Have we seen a copy of that legal opinion?
We have not. We've asked for it. We haven't seen that legal opinion yet. But, our attorney has looked at it, and I'm very confident in that opinion. I'm very curious about any opinion that says otherwise.
I'd love to see a copy of that opinion.
Absolutely.
If I'm gonna go into a meeting, I wanna do it well first.
We've asked for it.
But the problem is if they won't provide it, he's asked for it, I mean,
Is that something you're requesting the freedom of access?
Certainly.
Do it.
and how long do they have to respond?
They have a lot more time to respond than November 6th, but they may respond quicker, especially with probably the public pressure of a freedom of access request.
Does Channel 7, do you cover the,
You can go to anything that we need.
Yeah,
would you like to go with us?
I'd love to go.
Yeah, right,
Absolutely.
I'd love to have you.
Especially if you're there.
Oh, I also, one other side note that I want to make sure that we clarify. At our last meeting, I had said that it was $5,000 a year that the YMCA charged the school. It was not $5,000. I've had a few people explain that it was $1,000 a year. So if they're borrowing $400,000, that's 400 years worth of tennis at the Y before you had to pay that loan.
400 years.
Right. Yes, I want. I don't know. I'm
Either way, it's a lot of
right.
money.
I don't know.
Should I respond that we'll be in attendance?
Yes. I'll go.
Yeah, but I wish they'd come here.
Oh yes, me too.
The date again, Jim?
November 6th.
Did they give you a reason Why the town of Boothbay representatives wouldn't come to a Boothbay Selectmen's meeting?
We didn't get a reason, but I implied that it was because there's, like us, several members on the trustees, and they couldn't coordinate it in those 2 weeks.
They couldn't all make it.
I said we're much more flexible, and we'll try to be there on the 6th.
How big is the library?
No, it's big enough.
I haven't
It's
been-
big enough.
It's big enough.
It's big enough for the five of us.
Unless we get it out to the public.
But what I'm wondering is it big enough to invite the Harbor Selectmen too? Because I know they had questions as well about a month or so ago.
Well, it should be published in the paper, shouldn't it?
Their meeting should be published.
Yeah.
I know, but us attending.
Us attending. Yeah, I would notify the press that a quorum of the selectmen will be in attendance at that meeting. So if you'd like me to do a formal ad, we don't do formal ads for like these meetings because they're regularly occurring.
Yeah, we
It's
do.
not required, we can save $1. But on that case, I can do an ad.
I don't think it's,
I think it's public, you know?
no, I mean, they're gonna see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Enough people's watching us right now anyway, so they're hearing this.
Would you like me to craft a letter from the chair inviting the Harbor Selectmen?
Just telling them that we're going and if they'd like to go. I know that I don't know if they had gone to a meeting or, that's an interesting, I don't know if they went to a trustees meeting or if the trustees went to the Boothbay Harbor Selectmen's meeting. I'm not sure how that worked out, but anyway.
What time on the 6th?
What day?
5:15.
I'll send out an email reminder too.
What day does that fall on?
Wednesday. Wednesday, the first
It's
Wednesday.
on our off
First
week.
Wednesday of the month.
So, on our off week, the day after the vote. So if I show up with bags under my eyes. The next item under reports is, let me get myself together here. The Board of Appeals has a variance request. And like I put in your memo, I don't ordinarily tell you guys every time there is a variance request because it's not usually very big news. But in this case, the variance is from Mariner Tower. They're looking for a variance to our zoning ordinance to put a cell tower in an area that we designate as not an allowable area to put a tower. So our ordinance holds up in this case, but it gets a little bit more complicated as I explained through email, that our attorney wants to meet with the Board of Appeals. That meeting will happen on the 29th. It's a procedural meeting. There will be probably no back and forth like a normal Board of Appeals, even though the applicant is invited to attend. They don't need to attend, probably won't participate. Depending on the Board of Appeals chair, they may not have a public hearing comment. What they'll be doing is Sally will instruct them on the complexity of this and will tell them some recommendations on how they should go forward in hearing this variance in an equitable fashion. The complications are the Federal Communications Act of 1996 that we want to make sure we abide by. So that's the emphasis on why we've asked Sally to come in and immediately speak with the Board of Appeals.
Is a procedural meeting the same as a completeness review?
Kinda. I mean, they'll probably talk about the completeness of the application. And honestly, if they see it as incomplete, it becomes pretty easy. They just say it's incomplete, come back. They'll talk about those aspects of the application. It will be X's and O's. It won't be justification. So, I can't remember where I was going to go with this. There was one thing that I wanted to say while we had the floor in our meeting. One of the first things that I asked Sally is, okay, this, that stinks. What if we had adopted a moratorium? And she said, if you're looking at the Federal Communications Tower Act, they would have just gone around the Board of Appeals at that point. Because you would have said legally you can't have any towers in any period. So they would have just gone to federal court and asked for to go around it in that aspect. So you wouldn't have a local review of anything. So a moratorium was still not the right decision at that time. How this goes, I don't know. We'll see. And right now is probably not the best time for the Board of Selectmen to take positions on it, much like we did with Stimson Marine. Everybody has an idea of what's right and wrong or what should be done, but we could complicate this because it's quite possible the Board of Appeals could come to the selectmen for permission to expend monies, and at that time, you don't want political concerns getting involved.
And because the reason why this didn't go before the planning board first is because it's already an unacceptable use, so it automatically goes to hope to be an acceptable use and not an acceptable.
They're right, the application, and did we send that along? Did I send it via email? I think I did.
Yeah.
Lots of things going on. The application is requesting a variance, and I think if you read this, I'm not not a reviewer, I have no authority, but if you look at even the case on the what they're making, it doesn't fit within our ordinance either. So what we need to do is have somebody come that has professional guidance on how to align whatever we do with the Federal Communications Act, because that is the preemptive law applying right now.
Yep.
Any questions?
Is that a public meeting, 29th?
All meetings are public. Even if they, a lot of people have asked that, will they go into executive session? I don't know. I don't think they will, but if they did go into executive session, they have to meet in public first. So it will be a public meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
I just have a small question, and that is that Ryan, right?
Yeah.
Ryan has reported in the paper that just came out this evening that Mr. Farron has indicated that the purpose of the tower is for the sake of the town to provide coverage to emergency responders, municipal departments, and local fishermen. Has he ever discussed with the town his intent to improve the service for the emergency responders, municipal departments, and local fishermen? Has he ever discussed this with you?
With the Board of Selectmen?
Yes.
No, not to my knowledge. He hasn't come to any of our meetings. Know whether he's had them with town staff. I can't answer that.
Not me as the lead administrator. I mean, did you discuss it with somebody that works for the town? Maybe.
That was my only question. I just wanted to know if he'd ever discussed it with you.
Matter of fact, I didn't even know he was involved in it until I read the article on the Register. So.
Yeah, and the reason why I'm reporting is it's just very important that we play this by the book, black and white, letter of the law, because if we foul it up, it may not matter what our opinion is.
What time on the 29th, 6 or 7? 7.
Excellent. Special town meeting status. Al Roberts is going to show up, and hopefully we'll vote him as the moderator, as we have tradition. He's a great moderator. Obviously, this room will be set up after this meeting. We'll probably clear out chairs. We have the town hall for that last public hearing. Absentee ballots are available now if you're inclined to vote early. So we're all set for special town meeting.
It's kind of deceiving by saying special town meeting, because I just hope that people don't think that they're getting together at the town hall that night. I mean, really, it's more of a referendum than a special town meeting. It's kind of deceiving saying that. That's all. That make it clear that there is no town meeting per se at the town hall. It's strictly all written. Just kind of can be deceiving. That's all.
Yes.
Because that's a state election, it's 8 to 8, right?
It is 8 to 8. Yes, sir.
Oh, so it is really good.
Can I ask one more question that goes back to the tower thing?
Sure.
Just a quickie. In relation to this, are the emergency responders in town that would be communicating with the town municipal folk, are they on Verizon?
Town of Boothbay, all town of Boothbay provided cellular phones are on Verizon.
The ambulance service is
Verizon
Verizon as well.
Fire people, who would be involved?
Yeah, Boothbay Fire Department
Fire department
he
would
said
be
is Verizon. Yeah,
And ambulance?
it's Verizon.
Verizon.
I am
It's
not.
because of the poor AT&T signal.
Right. I am not sure.
Right.
That's why they all
I'm
have
not sure what
Verizon.
the sheriff's department use. No idea.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you either.
Right.
Last I knew they were USL, but they could have changed. That was several years ago.
Right. Okay.
Or USL.
Okay.
Can I ask you what your name is?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's Jean Gibson.
Thank you.
I mean, in all honesty, I can only speak from personal experience. I love I love the idea of an AT&T phone when I was looking at the prices online until you see the coverage down here, and really the whole coast, I mean.
Yeah.
That changed my mind. at
Northeast.
first, so. Right, northeast.
Northeast is awful.
You know, none of us really want to get into it this evening, but that's not part.
Right, I agree.
Actually, the coverage, it's not part of the issue. We all have to get coverage.
Yeah.
That's really not germane to the issue.
It's how they get it.
No, it's actually how we get that coverage and what device is used to provide that coverage. And a tower itself doesn't send or receive a signal. It's the antenna that does. So all we're objecting to in particular is the mount. Just the mount itself, not the antenna, which is the carrier. That's the signal carrier. We're just objecting to the mount, which also the ordinances object to the mount, that particular mount. Another type of mount.
Monopine confused me a little bit, but that's all.
Do you know? Yeah.
Yeah, but-
Everybody should look them up. There's pictures of them all over the place. You can see what they look like. Okay, thank you.
All set? Continuing on, Comprehensive Planning Committee, I put a sizable document in your packets about Chapter 5, Community Goals and Policies. The shaded, I wish I'd given you color, I forgot. But the shaded ones were the things that they worked on in that meeting, so they've adjusted those areas a little bit. And some of these words and wordings have been adjusted. The part that I really wanted to point out to the selectmen was the way that they're working with the section on population and demographics, A1-1, 1-2, 1-3, about different lot sizes dependent on some certain circumstances. And then another one, it's kind of ironic, that a lot of the letters to the editor about the TIF has talked about housing and stuff like that. Well, section C is the housing section, which we talked about in detail at the last meeting, and strategies and things that the Comprehensive Planning Committee thinks should be put into the comp plan on how to address housing in our area. Chuck, you're the chairman of the Comprehensive Planning Committee. You have anything to add?
Well, this will give you guys some idea of what we've been working on now for a number of months, and the help Mark Ironman has been giving us. What you have here was a document that we started with Monday, and there has been some wordsmithing and some changes to it as well, and you guys don't have the changes. Mark is integrating those into his copy, and we'll be getting those back to the committee. But they're all putting a lot of work into this, and when it's all said and done, we should have a really good product to take to town meeting.
You still think it's going to be ready for May town meeting?
It'll be close, but I'm optimistic.
We're getting through this aspect really fast.
But do we still, with this, you still have to hit the certain time frames to, so you must be pushing that back to what, March?
We're still, maybe it's a pipe dream, but we still expect to have a draft copy for January.
Oh, wow.
Whether we will or not, we'll see.
We're pushing for it.
We're pushing for it.
It's a lot of information to do between now and then.
There may be a second draft document that comes out in February, but we think we can make May town meeting.
Oh, good. I'm good.
It's a lot of information, Steve, it's not as much as you think, because there's more sections like the one that you guys received tonight that are all put together, that have all been wordsmithed, and Mark has it ready to go, and we're just adding to it.
It's kind of a off-the-wall question, but when you put these together, is it unanimously put together, or do you always have a certain one person here and one person there, or whatever, that doesn't
That's give and
necessarily
take
agree?
by the committee, but anything that moves forward is put forward by the majority.
Okay, I was just curious more than anything.
Yeah, the last couple of meetings have been a lot of give and take. I've heard somebody say, okay, I'm willing to go with that. You've convinced me of that, but I'm going to push harder on this. And, those are. I think that's what we want. That's why we have a diverse
That's
committee.
what a democracy is all about, really.
Yeah. Is that a national political comment?
Yeah.
Department head reports. Public Works has been working on breaking some ledge in East Boothbay. They're trying to improve drainage in that area. So I don't know if anybody's seen what they're doing there, but They have a couple of strategies they're trying to experiment with, trying to make better drainage in some of our rockier areas.
Whereabouts?
What's that?
Whereabouts?
I'll have to check with Mike. I didn't write it in my notes. I don't know exactly where they're working. I know the next thing that they're going to do is in Ocean Point. They have a real bad drainage issue, and Tom McGonnell has been beating on me all year long about this, and I keep saying we got to wait until we get past the construction season when the Public Works has time to address these issues that are smaller in the big scope of the town. I know they're important to those people, and especially when most people are away from Ocean Point and we can get in there and really work. So we're working on that one right now, or we'll be working on that here shortly, and hopefully get some pats on the back in the future. It would more chipping and chipping a brush on Dover Extension. The tides have been kind of bad for hauling out floats, so we haven't done any of that, even though we keep saying it's on the tip of our tongue. We had a request from Hodgson Yachts to plow out Shipbuilders Park when we do all of our roads for emergencies. I guess they're going to use it for access during part of the winter, which isn't a problem for us. We fit it right in, but I wanted to let you guys know. Usually that waits until after a storm. The sand, you guys brought up the sand price, so we went and made sure that we crossed our T's and dotted our I's. And there are only two vendors we can use that are reasonably close, Rennie and Wood. Rennie gave us the same price that we had last year for $5.50 per yard, and Wood gave us $6. So we ended up with the lowest price anyway, and we're going to get the sand from the same place at Crooker. There was a pit locally that we checked, the price was higher, and we would have ended up having to go with those same people for hauling. So I just wanted to retrace our steps. We'll start hauling sand probably at the end of the week. Another thing that we do with Boothbay Harbor, an agreement between Mike and Jody, is that at the end of the year, at the end of the plow year, Jody has salted sand, but he doesn't have a sand shed. We've arranged it that he gives us the salted sand. We ended up putting it in our sand shed. And then in return, when we buy sand, we give him unsalted sand the same quantity. It's a great deal for us. It just works out that they don't have a sand shed. So if you see sand that get delivered to Boothbay Harbor that gets billed to Boothbay, that's why we're doing that.
It's nice to know that our two departments are playing nice.
Yes, I agree.
Yep. Maybe we can get on the same salt purchasing someday. Assessing, Mike O'Donnell has worked out an arrangement with Terry Layton for maps. So Terry, I'm not sure of all the provisions of the agreement. That's an agreement between O'Donnell and Layton, not the town of Boothbay and Layton. To use all of their surveys, they're going to allow them to view and use all their surveys to create our base maps. It's a great, great deal. Great relationship in order to do those things. So in order to implement taking those surveys, Layton has imposed some restrictions, and I think that's when he can access them. They don't want them out in the free world for too long. So Mike's hours are going to be adjusted, so if you need to speak to the assessor, make sure you touch base with Lori or me or the business office in advance so that you know what day Mike's in here. Like this week, I think he's coming in on Friday, and next week he'll be in on Monday, so that he gets 2 days on both sides of the weekend. And obviously, because of that arrangement, he's working on our base map now, so we're excited. Code is still very busy. I think they said they had like 10 applications piled on the desk, but it's starting to slow down. And I don't know if that's good news or bad news, but we'll figure it out. Our code officers are going to finish their MUBEC testing here shortly. They're not required by law to do MUBEC testing. We're not a town that enforces MUBEC, but that legislative action last year that we were concerned about, where MUBEC may be imposed on all towns 2,000 in population and over, made us think it doesn't hurt to get them trained and certified in advance, and it's actually really good training to have anyway. They're good rules of thumb that they learn for building applications.
There hasn't been any talk of the town becoming MUBEC in comprehensive plan, is it? I mean, has that even?
No.
I mean, everything you hear about MUBEC it's a nightmare for code enforcement, it's expensive, and that's why I asked that question. I mean, I don't know if that to be true, that's just hearsay, but.
Well, it would be up to our comp plan anyway, or even the townspeople, it's up to the state of Maine if we hit the threshold for.
Right, but like Boothbay Harbor chose to go MUBEC. The voters, even though they're not required, I think last year they voted to be MUBEC certified.
It's all how you sell it to the voters too.
I agree.
And, yeah, and then in a general residential building, you end up like with 7 to a dozen extra inspections, and that's what's the part that's really a burden on the town, is to do the extra inspections. It usually means more staff in. And
That was
how
my
you-
fear, that's why I asked if you guys
Job security.
discussed it, just because I know other towns have, so.
Well, some
Like
towns
heaven.
hire third-party inspectors.
And also the builders. I mean, it really has put a strain on the builders.
Yeah, because they build up to point A, and then they call an inspector.
They have to stop
inspect
and
go
wait
to
to be
point B.
inspected.
It's cumbersome, and we don't look forward to a MUBEC adoption, but we certainly have the skill if it happens. That's all I have for reports.
We don't have any old business unless somebody has something they wanna. Okay, we'll move on to new business. Ice Bear agreement?
So you're all cognizant of the fact that the PUC and the pilot project on the peninsula to reduce the amount of energy used on the peninsula, so they don't have to do the major upgrade of the service lines. Well, part of that was, it originally was some AC units called Ice Bears. The first vendor that came through that was working for Boothbay Microgrid, and we know Boothbay Microgrid ended up dissolving and not doing anything, said we weren't a good fit for Ice Bears. Well, as that's evolved, Revision Energy took over the solar part. Well, Ice Energy has taken over the AC part. They came in, met with several businesses in the town of Boothbay being one. They said we're a perfect fit for Ice Bears, and they want to do 2 Ice Bear units in the town of Boothbay. The cost of this is $0. So once again, like solar, it's a pretty darn good deal. With $0 and no impact to the buildings, ordinarily this would be something that the town manager would take care of with his authority. But if you read the agreement that they gave us, there's a section in there where they're talking about they get authority for access, which just means access to the unit, which means access to the Ice Bear, which means access to the attic. And it also says in the agreement that we negotiate when that happens, so we would do it during business hours. But then I started thinking, I'd rather be safe than sorry. You guys have the authority to sign an agreement like this. I don't have authority on town grounds to give permissions. So I stopped where I was, and I'm proposing it to you guys for acceptance of the agreement. The other piece is, we're getting ready to do the budget process, and in my budget, I'm trying to figure out how I replace the AC unit for the front right corner of the building. The last 3 years that I've been here, we've serviced it 2 to 3 times a year, every year, because it leaks, it's having problems. The AC company that we use wants to replace the entire unit, so we were going to try to figure out how we pay for that. So I was kind of happy. It was nice timing. Any questions?
Couple. First one is, I'm assuming this is a 1-year agreement?
This is the lifetime of the unit.
I thought anything over a year, we had to go to town meeting.
No, you guys have authority to allow permissions on properties. You don't have authority to enter into a property use agreement that goes multiple years. You have property authority agreement. Does that make sense? So you can say you have permission to access. You can't say you change how you use the property.
Now, these units are the ones that make the ice and then melt the ice to cool.
Yes. So at night, they make ice when the energy impact is lower. And that's the energy savings portion of it. It's off peak, and that's why PUC is interested in these types of pieces of equipment. And during the day, they blow that ice, and it feels like AC. They also make their own coolant, so it's not just ice. The one thing that he did say, based on the locations of our units, we have 3 at the office. He only thinks 2 are compatible, 1 would not be compatible. But he also says,
There's one hanging up overhead here that probably wouldn't be compatible.
yeah, I think that's what he was saying. So, but he says that they actually create more BTUs than the regular AC. So he said, install the 2, and you may not even have to ever turn on the 3rd. So, I'm excited to find out if that's true. The best part of this agreement, and we did the legal review in the Chamber of Commerce. I serve on the board of the Chamber of Commerce, and we sent it out to our attorney. And the best part of this whole agreement is that if you agree to do this and they take out the AC units, and for any reason either party decides we don't want to do this anymore, they have to put back in the AC unit. So you go back to square one.
Any downs?
And maybe the ice bears don't work the same way as an AC unit. We're not happy with the quality of the AC.
And CNP loses a little extra money because not having pays.
Yeah, I mean, you could be one of the proponents against the PUC agreement for the pilot project. And in that case, you could say, we're paying too much in energy costs to get free AC to the town of Boothbay. That is a downside.
Any construction costs to put these in?
They do it as part of the agreement. I'm going to tell you straight up, they want the town of Boothbay because, we don't care if they make a lot of fanfare about ice bears sitting in our property, so they might come back later and say, can we put your project on our website and tell everybody about how great it is and try to sell ice bears for profit to somebody else.
Sounds like a win-win for us.
I
So I make a
agree.
motion that we enter into the agreement with the condition that the accessibility to the units is only during normal business hours.
Unless there's a repair. I mean, an emergency. I guess there wouldn't be if we weren't open.
Go back to doing business.
Any more discussion? Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Thank you. Sorry I slipped that in at the last minute.
And then the account 100128 balance.
So this is the property formerly owned by Olive Properties that was on Highland Lane that went through foreclosure, and we allowed Boothbay Harbor to go through the rigmarole of collecting, and we said we would sign off on the quitclaim deed. What we did, but we still have a balance on the account, and we can't wipe it out without the permission of the board. We had no ability to collect it because it was given to residents.
How much is the balance?
It's $415.14.
And the new owners will be paying tax on that in the town of Boothbay.
Correct.
Effective April 1.
Yeah. Yep. So I recommend that you waive the balance of that account.
So moved. Seconded.
Any more discussion?
The only other question I had, is there any proceeds from the sale?
I don't know the details. I think they were ironing it out. I don't think they're done yet.
We actually waived our rights to them. though,
Yeah,
didn't
we could have
We
entered
voted.
into an agreement with Boothbay Harbor to share the cost. We'd have hired an attorney to do that, and we were trying to get $415, so it would have been cost prohibitive.
Yeah, right.
All those in favor? Any more new business that's not on here? Public comment. Mike.
I'd like to briefly talk about Article number 4, ordinance changes. There's been some discussions, some questions have come up, and I just want to review some facts. I'll be brief about it. Article 4 has 32 proposed changes within it. Some of them clerical, some minor, and then there are some that are more considerable and important as far as I'm concerned. This board charged the planning board 2 years ago to look at the sign ordinance. That work actually began about 6 months ago. I spent considerable time personally looking into the sign ordinance and road setbacks, or sign setbacks, as well as internally illuminated signs and changeable display signs. I have had probably half a dozen conversations with Chip Kelly, Maine DOT, right-of-way supervisor, reviewing the state statute with him, understanding what that state statute says, Additionally, Dan Breyer provided us with copies of ordinances from other towns. One of the things that we were really looking forward to was trying to understand what we could do for Bigelow Labs. And the end result right now is in compliance with Maine DOT standards, statute, 33 feet setback from the center of the road is where Bigelow Labs can have their sign. That same requirement applies to most all of the signs along Route 27. A high percentage of those signs along 27 and throughout town are not in compliance right now with the current ordinance standards that says 50 feet back. How we got there, I don't know. That's irrelevant. What the state says, what we can do, I think that's important right now. Regarding internally illuminated signs and regarding changeable display signs, T&D Variety has one, the Clipper Mart has one, and there are two components to those signs. Internally illuminated means it's lit internally with white lighting. What the state says is you cannot create an internally illuminated sign that impairs a driver's vision coming down the road. That is the most important part of that. Regarding changeable signs, what the state says is you cannot have a changeable sign, changeable display sign. High school has just installed one. And there was another one, temporary sign on the side of Route 27 in front of the high school. What they basically say is you cannot have a sign that flashes, scrolls, has animation to it. And there's one other feature to that. That is what the state is saying. The signs that we currently have here in town, they meet all of those requirements. Chip Kelly from the state has come down. He has looked at those signs. Not a problem as he is concerned. Regarding some of the other changes, Dan made some recommendations above and beyond the things that I researched, looking at other towns, looking what the state says we can do. The changes that we have put forth here are all in alignment with the state statute and their current rules and regulations. I guess one of the things that I found disappointing was during our workshops, during our public hearings, we did not have a lot of turnout from the public to talk to us about really any of those. We had more discussion regarding David Stimson, and one of the ordinance changes that we've proposed is to change the home occupation use that would allow him to build boats. I think some of the other changes that we have within those ordinance changes are a change to the C3 district zoning map, which basically changes that map boundary line and it puts the transfer station, Public Works, EA Giles and Son, the golf course, puts them in a C3 district, which is where they should be. They're all commercial businesses. One of the other changes that we've talked about is changing or removing driveways and parking lots from the definition of a structure. It just created an additional setback and it wasn't necessary. Are all of these changes perfect that we've made? I don't know, I can't answer that. My opinion, ever since I've become part of the planning board, is ordinances are a work in progress. They're going to change every year. When you think you've got them right, someone's going to say something and you're going to realize we should take a look at that again. And it's the way they're always going to be. I strongly recommend a yes vote for Article 4. I think there may be a few concerns with some of these. 90–95% of them are in the best interest of this town. Anyway, any questions?
Not a question, but just to back you up, there's a lot of documents in this town that are not exactly perfect, but they can be amended or changed down the road. It's the work in progress. It's the making the effort, doing the footwork, getting it out there and getting it so it can be worked with for a while and say, all right, well, there are a couple of glitches. Let's work through those. I commend you for your time. And you're right, it was this board that was 2 years ago, tried to have the planning board go through that, so it's nice to see that it's actually going to be here on this vote.
It'd be fair that this board has thrown a lot at the planning board in the last 2 years.
They have.
It'd be interesting to know how many times, say, since 2000, them ordinances have been changed, whether it be by a couple of little, I mean, it's a lot. I mean, it seems like every town meeting, at a minimum, we have a few zoning changes. I mean, it's a constant moving target, so to speak, because of law changes and people finding this or that wrong with it, so.
I think it's the 7th 7th major change in the last 10 years.
Wow. It's pretty, but that's, I mean, it's probably typical, I think, with any town.
It's moving forward.
Yeah. Other than the town that operates by, what is it, a council where they don't, the council just approves them, I believe, instead of the voters. I mean,
That's correct.
in the cities. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks.
Any more public comment?
I think everybody should go home and watch the Red Sox.
Oh, nice job, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion to review the warrants and sign them upon review.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? And it's motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?